Juliana Redding, a 21-year-old aspiring actress, relocated from Arizona to Santa Monica in 2005, but her journey would ultimately culminate in tragedy, marked by numerous unexpected developments. This case has led many to question whether true justice was achieved, as the outcome defied all expectations. Today, Juliana's family grapples with the painful reality that the individual responsible for her death may never be held accountable for their atrocious actions. Juliana was raised in Tucson, Arizona, where she attended Salpointe Catholic High School and enjoyed a fulfilling childhood. She maintained a close relationship with her family, and upon graduation, she chose to move to California to pursue her dream of becoming a model. However, her deeper aspiration was to establish her own business, and she expressed to her parents, Patricia and Greg, her desire to open a boutique in the future. After settling in Los Angeles, she consistently kept in touch with her family, frequently calling her parents to share updates on her progress. They exchanged texts regularly, and she occasionally returned to Tucson for visits. By 2008, she was residing alone in a bungalow in Santa Monica while attending Santa Monica College. To supplement her income, she took on a role as a hostess at a restaurant while pursuing modeling and acting opportunities. For the moment, Juliana appeared satisfied with her circumstances. However, this would change on March 16 of that year when Patricia discovered she was unable to reach her daughter. It is known that Juliana played a round of golf on March 15, after which she returned to her bungalow and chose to spend the evening indoors, watching reruns of Seinfeld. The next evening, Patricia grew increasingly worried when she received a call from Juliana's neighbors, who reported that they had not seen her throughout the day and that her dog was inside the bungalow, which appeared entirely vacant. Patricia attempted to contact her daughter multiple times, hoping for a response, but Juliana did not answer or return any of her mother's calls. Initially, Patricia thought her daughter might simply be preoccupied, but by 6 p.m., the lack of communication led her to believe that something was amiss. It was at that point that she decided to contact the police. The disappearance. Patricia provided investigators with an account of the situation and requested a welfare check, to which they consented. Officers proceeded to the bungalow and conducted an exterior examination, finding nothing unusual or suspicious. Her vehicle remained parked in the driveway, indicating that she should have been at home. However, the bungalow was eerily quiet. Upon entering the residence, the officers sensed that something was amiss. They observed a candle flickering at the main entrance and quickly detected the scent of natural gas, which was traced to a gas stove that had been left on without a flame, rendering the entire room a potential hazard. Their investigation led to an even more disturbing revelation. As they searched the house, they entered the back bedroom and discovered Juliana. Tragically, she was deceased. The detectives swiftly concluded that she had been strangled, and it was evident that she had fought back against her assailant. All evidence pointed to a violent confrontation having occurred throughout the apartment. This hypothesis was supported by the discovery of Juliana's DNA under her fingernails, indicating her struggle to free herself from her attacker's grip. While there were few leads regarding the identity of her killer, it was clear that the intruder had intended to erase their presence by causing an explosion in the apartment. They had anticipated that the gas released from the stove would interact with the lit candle, potentially resulting in an explosion that could eliminate much of the evidence at the scene. However, it is thought that due to the building's age, the gas did not accumulate sufficiently to trigger an explosion. Consequently, investigators soon began to reconstruct the events leading up to Juliana's death. It was believed that an intruder entered the bungalow around 10 p.m. on the night of March 15 th. After gaining access, the assailant attacked Juliana, inflicting head injuries by forcefully striking her against the floor. Given the prolonged nature of the assault, investigators surmised that the attacker did not anticipate her resistance, ultimately resorting to strangulation. Subsequent investigations revealed that Juliana had attempted to reach emergency services, as her phone records indicated a call to 911 that was disconnected before it could connect. Neighbors who informed Patricia reported hearing the sounds of furniture being moved and someone screaming at 9:53 p.m. the previous night. However, they noted that they had not observed any suspicious individuals in or around the building, which raises concerns about their failure to take the situation more seriously. It is important to consider that the individuals involved cannot be held entirely accountable. As they mentioned, nothing appeared to be unusual, and it could have merely been a small gathering, as far as they were aware. Evidence was gathered from the location, which included multiple DNA samples discovered on the front door of the building, the phone, Juliana's clothing, and her throat. These samples were forwarded to a laboratory for examination, although the results would require some time to determine who had entered her apartment. Meanwhile, investigators conducted interviews with Juliana's family and friends, who provided as much information about her life as possible. During discussions with crime scene specialists, Juliana's father recommended reaching out to a man named John Gilmore, with whom Juliana had a tumultuous relationship. He expressed his concerns regarding Juliana's safety upon learning of their relationship, as Gilmore was known for his violent outbursts, which had previously manifested when he forcibly damaged her car door and had intruded into her apartment. Upon receiving this information, the investigators felt they had finally uncovered the lead they had been seeking. They promptly set out to find John, and it did not take long for them to locate him. The main suspect? During the interview, John Gilmore indicated that he had visited Juliana's residence that Sunday morning but received no response at the door, despite her vehicle being parked in the driveway. He peered through the security gate and observed a burning candle, although he did not detect any smell of gas. When questioned about the reported violent incidents, he acknowledged that he and Juliana had occasionally engaged in arguments, including one that occurred that Saturday night regarding his plans for the evening. He had informed her of his intention to spend time with friends, which seemed to upset her, leading to an abrupt end to their phone call. He asserted that she chose to spend the evening with a friend, while he attended a house party a few miles from her apartment. Despite the lingering tension between them, they continued to exchange text messages throughout the night. However, around 10 p.m., she ceased responding. The following morning, after receiving no reply, he attempted to call her and sent multiple text messages, but once again, he received no response. He arrived at her building but had no option but to leave when he could not locate her. Although he was initially the prime suspect, his name was quickly exonerated due to surveillance footage from the night of the incident. The security cameras captured him visiting a convenience store and a Jack-in-the-Box restaurant. Numerous attendees from the house party were able to verify his presence during the time of the attack, as they observed him between 9:45 and 10:15 p.m. His innocence was further substantiated when it was disclosed that a significant portion of the DNA found in the apartment belonged to a female, not a male, leaving the police with many unresolved inquiries. Consequently, they began the process of interviewing all the women in her life. There was speculation that someone close to her may have developed jealousy over her appearance or lifestyle, or that a love triangle could be involved. Investigators gathered DNA samples from everyone they interviewed, but this effort yielded no results, as no matches were found for the samples taken from her apartment. It was then that they uncovered the existence of another man in her life, a doctor named Munir. Through further investigation and questioning, authorities discovered that Juliana and Munir had first met while she was working at a restaurant in 2007. He must have been quite taken with her, as he offered her a position as his medical assistant, which she accepted without hesitation. Working as a hostess or waitress in a restaurant typically offers limited financial rewards, especially when considering the challenges posed by customers. It is understandable that she would seize the chance to increase her earnings. However, their relationship was destined to evolve beyond a purely professional connection. Before long, she consented to move in with Munir, who showered her with gifts and provided her with accommodation in his luxurious Beverly Hills residence. While this arrangement may have initially seemed appealing, Juliana soon grew apprehensive about Munir's behavior, sensing an unhealthy obsession developing. He expressed his desire to purchase an extravagant car for her 21st birthday and even broached the subject of marriage at one point. Although it was clear that she would lack for nothing, given his affluence, his tendency to lavish money on jewelry, cars, and other women left her feeling overwhelmed and uneasy. It remains uncertain whether Munir misinterpreted Juliana's message or if he exaggerated the situation due to a form of delusional optimism. Regardless of the circumstances, Munir's behavior became increasingly peculiar, prompting Juliana to quickly recognize the necessity of extricating herself from the relationship. The breakup. Eventually, Juliana gathered her thoughts and resolved to terminate her relationship with Munir. Following this decision, she moved to a bungalow in Santa Monica, funded by her father. The couple ended their relationship amicably and maintained communication, which was somewhat unexpected. A friend of Juliana later disclosed that she, along with Juliana and Munir, had traveled to Las Vegas to celebrate the friend's birthday. However, the situation was not as it appeared, as Juliana's father began investigating Munir's background, uncovering alarming information. He found that Munir was not only married during his alleged relationship with Juliana but also had 3 children residing in Lebanon. He was convinced that his family was unaware of Juliana or any of the other women he had been associated with, and he subsequently shared his findings with his daughter. She was shocked and distressed by the news, promptly informing him that she no longer wished to see him and even instructed him to refrain from contacting her again, which was likely the appropriate decision. Although Juliana and Munir had severed their relationship, her father, Greg, a pharmacist, maintained communication with Munir due to their ongoing business negotiations. However, the deal ultimately collapsed when Greg grew apprehensive about Munir's potentially illicit business practices. Evidence against Munir began to accumulate rapidly, revealing that he was not the person he claimed to be. Investigators found it peculiar that Juliana's life ended just a week after the deal soured, leading them to suspect that Munir possessed more information than he was disclosing. However, it is important to note that his DNA was not present at the crime scene. They were unable to question him at that time as he had departed the country, prompting them to investigate his background in the interim. Given his somewhat questionable history with women, they began examining the female employees he had previously employed. They harbored suspicions that the female DNA discovered at the crime scene might be linked to Munir, yet they lacked the evidence to substantiate these theories. Many of his previous female employees were either out of contact with him or unaware of Juliana. However, upon investigating the relationship between him and a 47-year-old woman named Kellysa Park, their suspicions intensified. He had made numerous significant payments to her, amounting to over $1 million within a mere 18 months. Park had previously participated in several of his business transactions while working as a real estate broker. Although they could not definitively link Park to the attack on Juliana, they opted to surveil her in hopes of obtaining a DNA sample without her knowledge. If she were indeed connected to the crime, she might have warned Munir about the authorities' interest in collecting her DNA, necessitating a discreet approach. Their efforts eventually bore fruit when they successfully retrieved one of her discarded cigarette butts, which was subsequently sent for analysis. Soon after, investigators announced a significant breakthrough in the case, revealing that Park's DNA perfectly matched the samples obtained from Juliana's bungalow. This discovery left no doubt regarding Park's presence during the attack, and it raised the likelihood of Munir's involvement, although he had yet to return to the United States for questioning. Consequently, Park was arrested and promptly charged with the crime against Juliana. It is believed that Munir became aware of her arrest only a few days later, as he abruptly disappeared, with speculation suggesting he was likely in Lebanon to evade law enforcement. However, the motive behind Juliana's actions remained ambiguous. There were suggestions that Munir was displeased with the conclusion of their relationship or that he became agitated when a business arrangement with her father fell apart. Consequently, it was theorized that he engaged Park to execute the attack as an act of vengeance. One of the more prevalent theories posited that Munir directed Park to coerce Greg into finalizing their business deal, which included an aggressive visit to Juliana at her residence as part of the intimidation strategy. However, when Juliana began to defend herself, Park was caught off guard, resulting in a fatal struggle between the two women, although this remained a speculative account. This aspect would later be raised in court, where it was contended that Munir had agreed to compensate Park with a 6-figure sum to ensure the execution of his plan. Upon the media's coverage of Park's arrest, the LA Times disclosed information indicating that she had a history of intimidating individuals who opposed Munir's business ventures, suggesting her potential involvement in this incident as well. In a previous instance, she had threatened a bank manager who had terminated a business agreement, and on another occasion, she was instructed to intimidate a client of Munir's who had defaulted on payments. Despite the substantial evidence discovered in Juliana's bungalow, along with DNA linking her to the crime scene, Park opted to plead not guilty to charges of second-degree homicide. Her defense team announced their intention to argue in court that the two women had never encountered one another, asserting that their only connection was Munir, who remained abroad. Conversely, the prosecution aimed to demonstrate that Park had been employed by Munir as an enforcer, contending that her intimidation tactics ultimately resulted in Juliana's death. However, this argument was not permitted in court, as the presiding judge determined that there was insufficient evidence to support it. Consequently, the prosecution was required to depend on the evidence collected at the scene, including the DNA that matched Park. They would also highlight that Park stood nearly 6 feet tall, presenting as an imposing and self-assured individual capable of easily assuming the role of enforcer or intimidator at Munir's command. Her presence was genuinely unsettling, characterized by a personality and energy that were difficult to overlook. The evidence against Park had accumulated significantly, making it appear almost inevitable that she would be convicted of Juliana's murder. Her DNA was discovered in multiple locations within the apartment, including on Juliana's clothing, within the locks of the front door, on the telephone, and most damningly, on her throat. In the kitchen sink, crime scene investigators uncovered a drop of blood alongside a fingerprint that matched Park's. The prosecution argued that this constituted irrefutable evidence of her presence in the apartment that night, especially since the two women were unfamiliar with one another, leaving no plausible reason for Park to be there other than to execute an attack ordered by Munir. Moreover, they contended that it was indisputable she had taken Juliana's life, as her DNA was found on the victim's throat, suggesting that Park was responsible for the act of manual strangulation. However, attributing this crime to her proved to be a far more complex task than anticipated. She was determined to resist any attempts to bring her down, reminiscent of the evening she faced Juliana in her apartment. Her defense team possessed numerous strategies and was prepared to exhaust every option to exonerate Park. The trial revealed that Kelly Park's defense team proposed an alternative theory that they argued raised doubts about the assertion that she had been present in the apartment with Juliana on the night of the incident. Given the absence of witnesses that evening, they argued that significant uncertainty surrounded the events that unfolded. Moreover, they suggested that Park's DNA might have been introduced to the building through DNA transfer. This phenomenon occurs when an individual comes into contact with an item belonging to another person, which is subsequently discovered at a crime scene, leading to the wrongful suspicion of an innocent individual due to the presence of their DNA. Another scenario involves two individuals touching the same item, resulting in the transfer of one person's DNA to the other. In this context, it was posited that Park may have handled an item that was also touched by Juliana's assailant, thereby inadvertently transferring her DNA to the crime scene. They specifically referenced a towel that Park might have used during her visit to Munir's Beverly Hills residence 5 months prior. The assertion was made that the perpetrator executed the crime and subsequently attempted to eliminate their fingerprints and DNA using the same towel, inadvertently transferring Park's DNA to the crime scene in the process. It was noted that Park had frequented the residence on multiple occasions, as she was recognized as a business associate of the accused, and given that Juliana had resided in that same house at one time, it was plausible that Park's DNA could have been unintentionally transferred to Juliana's bungalow. In addressing Munir's involvement in the crime, the defense contended that a failed business transaction with Juliana's father did not constitute a compelling motive for her murder, nor did the termination of their relationship. Regarding the substantial sum of money transferred from Munir to Park's bank account, the defense maintained that these were merely payments owed to her, as both she and Munir had a history of conducting business together. The prosecution presented evidence to the court indicating that Munir had previously claimed to have employed a woman akin to a female James Bond. They constructed their argument around the premise that she was compensated to act as an assassin, suggesting that Munir possessed sufficient motive to orchestrate a hit on Juliana. The developments in this case were becoming increasingly sensational, with certain elements of the court proceedings appearing utterly implausible. The LA Times reported that Park's phone records indicated she had contacted Juliana's workplace and was seen outside her bungalow the night prior to the assault. Given that they had never previously met, the only plausible explanation for Park's attempt to reach out to her was to ascertain her schedule and surveil her apartment in preparation for the attack. Additionally, it was reported that Park and Munir had conspired in a health insurance fraud scheme that was still under investigation by the authorities at that time. The trial was set to continue until 2013, an exceptionally lengthy duration, yet the jury's decision regarding Park was nothing short of shocking. The verdict following the completion of all court proceedings, the jury rendered a verdict of not guilty for Kelly Park. The friends and family of Juliana, who attended the trial, expressed their outrage at this decision, vocally asserting that she was aware of her guilt and that a grave miscarriage of justice had occurred as she was escorted from the courtroom. This outcome implied that no one would be held responsible for Juliana's tragic death, and the one individual linked to all parties involved in the case would remain unexamined, as he was unreachable. This verdict, for all the painfully evident reasons, must have profoundly impacted her family, who chose to respond to the verdict through a written statement, articulating their sorrow and disbelief that justice had not been achieved. Lebanon's lack of an extradition treaty with the United States exacerbates the situation, as the nation prioritizes the protection of its citizens. Consequently, as long as Munir remains in Lebanon, he is unlikely to face any legal repercussions for his actions. The overwhelming evidence against both Park and Munir has left many incredulous that they have not been convicted. However, over time, the family has endeavored to accept this outcome. Patricia, the mother, has taken to using her daughter's room as a space for painting, which allows her to maintain a semblance of connection with her daughter, even after many years. She has turned to art as a means of coping, finding that her most profound work emerges during emotional moments. At times, she feels as if she, Greg, and their son Patrick are still trapped in the year 2008, the year of the attack, struggling to comprehend how Park and Munir escaped unscathed. Fortunately, Patricia has discovered new purpose in her life, honoring her daughter through her artistic endeavors. After overcoming breast cancer, she has begun to seek the silver linings in the challenges she encounters. Regarding Munir, it is believed that he returned to his family in Lebanon after evading authorities in the United States, and he continues to assert his innocence, having never faced charges or inquiries. In 2015, he was arrested in Germany on suspicions of engaging in medical fraud. However, no charges were ultimately pursued. It is claimed that he permitted a physician's assistant, who lacked formal medical training, to conduct surgeries while his patients were led to believe that he would be the one performing these procedures. Over 20 patients have come forward, reporting that they suffered permanent injuries as a result of these actions. For reasons that remain unclear, he was released and subsequently traveled to Lebanon, where he is again under suspicion for medical fraud. Park was also implicated in the 2015 German case and faced charges including conspiracy, deceiving patients, causing disfigurement through unsuccessful surgeries, and defrauding insurance companies of $150 million. She was eventually released on a $1.5 million bail and managed to evade law enforcement once more. Juliana's situation is marked by a lack of resolution and complex challenges. Her family endeavored to shield her from Munir upon realizing he was leading a duplicitous life, yet ultimately, he faced no significant repercussions. While some may view this as an unresolved case, it is evident that the truth is known. The justice system occasionally fails those who place their faith in due process, regardless of the substantial evidence available. It is hoped that this case serves as a lesson to prevent similar failures from becoming a norm in the future.